Welcome to the Company Move podcast, where we explore what life outside of the film and television industry could look like by talking to folks who have made the leap. I'm your host, Rennie Pollack, a union second assistant camera person currently living and working in Chicago, Illinois. I'll be learning and growing along with you, so let's go. Company's on the move. The life of Matt Vaessen is a winding path of exploration and reinvention. Originally from Green Bay, Wisconsin, Matt began his journey with the U.S. Army, where he developed skills in security management before transitioning to the world of film and media. His work in production and locations department spans numerous documentaries, films, commercials, and TV shows. Matt's career took a new direction when he moved to Chicago and joined a then small startup called GrubHub, where he led a data management team. His professional journey also included stints in Central Illinois, Door County, Wisconsin, Chautauqua, New York, and San Diego, California, before returning to Chicago, the best city. Most recently, Matt joined Brighside Benefits, focusing on financial health and crisis support as a customer support associate on the community resource and research team. Outside of work, Matt is happily married to Adina, and together they share their home with two beloved cats, Ellie and Rowan. Matt enjoys life in Chicago's Albany Park neighborhood, where he continues to embrace new challenges and adventures. Matt Vaessen, welcome to Company Move.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Can you tell me what your job was in film, how you got into it, and what your experience was?
Yeah, it's kind of a long journey. I'm probably older than most people that you're going to interview or have interviewed. I started out working in commercials, TV commercials, when we were still shooting on cameras in beta.
Oh, wow. Beta?
Yeah, beta. I did some 16 millimeter work too.
I worked in TV for a while, and we did record on beta.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's like VHS was all the hit, but everybody was using beta because it was a better quality as far as the commercial and film industry went. And I started, actually, I remember my first gig, I was an assistant on a program for PBS called Green to Gold, which was a historical piece about Vince Lombardi and the Green Bay Packers. And that was in 1996 when the Packers were in the playoffs to go to the Super Bowl. Spoilers, they won the Super Bowl that year. Uh-huh. And it was, I think, February, either late January or early February. And I got tagged in by a friend from HVS Video to help them shoot some B-roll footage for that. And that same day, we shot a TV commercial for Oneida Bingo and Casino. It was, I think, -5 degrees outside.
Oof.
We had to keep the camera warm. Like, you have to acclimate the camera to the environment. And so, like...
No, it's okay. I understand this because I'm in camera, but not everyone understands that.
Sorry. So there was a lot of, like, going into buildings, warming up the camera, going outside, taking some footage, going back into buildings, warming up the camera. Because we're dealing with tape also at that time. And tape was also affected by the cold.
We also had to do this with Reds when these first came out.
Yeah, Reds too, yeah. And then I remember... we got to the part where we were shooting B footage. I was on the sidelines for the Carolina Panthers versus the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field in -5 temperatures. Oh. And we got to halftime, and the camera operator and producer looked at me, and we all looked at each other while we were huddled together trying to stay warmer. And the camera operator and the producer looked at me and said, "I think we have enough footage. Let's go home." I was wearing like 15 layers of clothes, and I was still freezing. And I remember I got home in time before the halftime was over, and I was under a blanket drinking hot cocoa.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, that's my first job in the industry.
And it kept you going for a while, huh?
Well, I wasn't in it to win it from the beginning. And that was 1996. And I don't think I did anything else in film until about 2001 and 2. I started just messing around with short films with a friend of mine who was a special effects guy from K&B out in L.A., and he moved back to Wisconsin, and he wanted to make some horror short films, and so we got together and started making horror short films. And then I started getting hired to do production coordinating for local commercials and infomercials, and then I did like corporate videos and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then I got hired to work in the production office for Michael Mann for Public Enemy.
Oh, that's so funny. J.R. Huntington.
I know JR.
You know J.R.
I know JR.
He's my third episode.
Okay.
And he was set deck on that.
That was interesting. I worked on that I didn't do the full shoot. I did the Wisconsin part of it. I did it for about 45 days. And I could probably go on for hours about working on that shoot. And then I worked with Tony Shalhoub, and Michael Matzdorf was the director on a film called Feed the Fish. That was filmed, I don't know what it is with winter. I guess nobody wants to work in winter except for us. So this is another winter shoot in northern Wisconsin, in Door County, Wisconsin. And I remember I was location scout and location manager on that. And I remember there was a day that we had a blizzard blow through, and there was like 3 feet of snow on the ground. One of the production assistants had a Jeep, and she had to go around and pick everybody up because we were on such a tight schedule, we couldn't lose a day of shooting to snow. So it was crazy.
Because, God forbid.
Right. And then I did a lot of commercial shoots. If you ever saw one of the Aaron Rodgers State Farm commercials.
Oh, yeah.
I probably worked on it.
Okay.
Do you remember Discovery Health?
No.
It's part of the Discovery Channel.
Okay.
And I did 2 or 3 shows with them. I can't even remember the names of them. I have to look up what they are. And then for a while I was getting hired by the BBC to do Where You Come From. No, what's the name of the program? It's a very famous program, and now I can't remember it because, of course,
Time.
Yeah, time.
Time has happened.
Anyways, and so I was all over the place, but I really, to get to the question of I worked on a lot of fun shoots, and I enjoyed it, and I did a lot of shoots in the field. I never was really in the studio too much. I did a lot of production coordinating. I did a lot of, everybody starts out as a production assistant. I never took a production assistant job unless I got paid.
Mm-hmm. Good for you. Yeah, I wish I could say the same.
And I turned down a lot of jobs for the exposure, because I would have people literally hand me scripts at times and say, "Hey, will you produce this or help on it?" I'd be like, "Great, yeah. What's your financing looking like?" And they're like, "Oh, I don't have any financing." And I'm like, I can't do it then, buddy. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Good for you. You had standards from the beginning.
Yeah, but I did a lot of commercial shoots that I love too. I ended up working with quite a few local studios in northeastern Wisconsin and Milwaukee and Madison and places like that. And then the industry at that point in time, when was that? It must have been 2008, 2009, somewhere in there. So the industry took a turn and didn't really come back for me. And I also was injured. So the whole time I was working in film, I worked with one guy at Launch Studios. His name was Drew. He was the owner. And his thing was always to say, well, you got to make hay when the sun shines. And it didn't take long. If I went 2 or 3 months without a job, without something, I was beginning to feel destitute. And so I was, just doing anything and everything. Well, I worked with a art designer, Cindy Sweetland, Sweetland Designs. And she ran a contract company on the side for construction. And I started moonlighting, or got a full-time job doing construction like you do, or, anything to pay the bills when you don't have a job in film. And that turned into full-time work for me. And then I blew out my knee. And I wasn't able to do construction, and I wasn't able to do film anymore. And I had about 6 months of really hard trying to find something that wasn't manual labor and wasn't in film. And then luckily, I landed on my feet, and I ended up meeting my beautiful wife, and we ended up getting married, and I moved down to Chicago, and things started to stabilize with me, and I could work again. And I went up to, at this time I was living in Chicago, and I was kind of still doing film work and commercial work. And I got hired here and there to do some location scouting in Illinois and Wisconsin, but it wasn't really there. And then I got hired to do a job in Wisconsin. But the producer, and this was a commercial job. This wasn't a fly by night production of a film or something like that. This was an actual money commercial. And the producer said, "Hey, I need to bring you on. but I can only give you a production assistant pay. And I said, well, I'm only going to do production assistant work then. Then you're not hiring me as a location manager, because that's what he really needed. I said, I'll do the PA work. And he said, great. And then the shoot was done, and they were packing it up, and everybody was going home, and he came to me at the wrap party, and he said, hey, I need somebody to go back to location and to close it out. Can you do that tomorrow morning? And I said, great. I said, are you going to then hire me at my day rate as a location manager? And he said, well, we can't really afford to do that. And I said, well, then you can't really afford me. And that's when I came to the realization that, like, I was fighting so hard to get adequate pay. And I knew that these producers who were coming out of LA, who were coming out of the UK, who were coming out of Chicago, they had the budgets. But the line producers and the coordinators were trying to, like, throttle everything down to pay the least amount of money as possible.
And get an excited PA or, to give the jobs of the people that should be getting paid more. Yeah.
They wanted to look good. They wanted to look good to these production companies and say, oh, look what I delivered under budget.
Yeah.
And I just told them flat out, I said, if you can't meet my day rate, then don't call me. And they lost my number.
Wow. I am so impressed. It's so hard because I know me personally, I did a lot of stuff that I should have gotten paid more for the exposure, for the experience. And sometimes the experience was helpful, but most times those people just called me for more of the same and not bringing me on to the things that they were getting more budget for. So when I look back at the times that I, worked for nothing or worked for free or worked for like $100 a day, they never called me when they had big stuff. So it never worked out. So I really respect the fact that you held your ground and had some boundaries up front. I think I generally was afraid of not getting the call again or burning a bridge. And it's like, well, I'm not going to get the call again anyway. Why would I?
Yeah. And like, I understand from like a producer's standpoint to hire, a production coordinator or a line producer who's going to run such a tight budget that you'll have money left over after, where they'll come in under budget. And we're talking commercial shoots here. I mean, movies that come out of LA and stuff like that have big studios behind them. Never had any problem with them paying me. Nobody ever bounced a check to me from them. It was always the smaller commercial companies, and it's the big ones that you see on TV.
Yeah. They have the money. It's just that
And so that situation is not sustainable. And like you said, that they'll just like, well, if you don't want to do it anymore, I'll find the next young person in line or inexperienced person in line who's willing to do it.
It's the jumping over dollars to save pennies. So this was all in Chicago. Did you, when you were in San Diego, did you work at all in production?
So no, I transitioned out of it before I moved to San Diego.
Okay.
I actually started doing front of house work for theaters. I started in Chautauqua, New York. I ran their opera and their...
Wait, how did you get there? Okay, wait.
Yeah,
so tell me, give me your timeline. So you were in Wisconsin and then Chicago. When did you meet Adina?
I met Adina when I was up in Green Bay.
Matt and I met through his wife, Adina. Adina and I met during the strikes here. I was volunteering in mutual aid, and we kind of built our own little like mutual aid wing of Chicago for a while. That was pretty successful.
Very successful. There were people around the nation looking at your...
Yeah, we did a good job.
Did a very good job.
And Adina and I just clicked right away. And then she's like, oh, my husband used to work in production. So that's how we're here.
The roundabout way.
Yes. So you met Adina in Wisconsin. You guys moved to Chicago.
Right. So when Adina met me, I was working in film. So I got down to Chicago, and I knew I needed a job, and I knew that the film and commercial work wasn't working out for me. I tried to get into it. Like, I think when you get into these communities like Chicago, LA, Portland, San Diego, they have their own network of people, and you gotta know somebody to get the job. And I think it's so ridiculous. Do you know how I got the job on Public Enemy?
No, tell me.
I faxed him my resume. Then I called his office. I found his office number somewhere because those numbers aren't published.
Right.
Called Michael Mann's office and said, hey, did you get my resume? And the lady on the other end said, "Oh, yeah." This is back in the day of faxes still. She said, "Yes, we did get your resume, but we're not hiring right now." And I said, "Great. Could you take a look at it and pass it along for me?" And she's like, "Oh, you're not taking no for an answer, are you?"
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I ignored the first no, and that's how I got the job.
Yeah.
So, and when people ask me, like, I think I get asked more about, like, how did you get into film than I do about any other industry. And I'm like, I tried really hard and I became annoying.
Okay. So how did you get to New York?
Oh, I didn't get to New York. So I moved to Chicago. My wife and I got married. I did a beer commercial. Oh boy, I should have brought my own notes for my history. But it was the end of the world Mayan calendar beer.
Oh.
And we shut down the financial district in Chicago on a Sunday evening. And then we shot an end of the world scene on the famous strip LaSalle.
Okay.
You're looking, the Batman building, looking at the Batman building and stuff like that. Pay was negotiable. And at the end of the shoot, and it was only a one-day shoot, so I didn't really care. I was like, well, if they give me $50, whatever, I'll be happy. Did location management and scout for them. And the representative from the beer company opened up the trunk of his SUV, and it was just full of beer. And he's like, "Take what you can carry." And I was like, "Dang it, I took the train today." So I ended up with just a case. What was that? What is that? $24.95 I got paid?
Yeah. Oh, wait, that's all they paid you?
That's all they paid me.
Oh, man.
Yeah, see, I did my freebies in there every once in a while, and I was just like, this isn't worth it. These people need to, there's money to be had, and they're not having it.
Yeah.
And that commercial went on to win awards.
Of course.
Awards.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was in Chicago. Film thing wasn't really working out, so I went to a temp agency. And I said, "Hey, I've got all these skills, and I don't want to do film and commercial anymore. Can you set me up?" And they said, "Oh, you'll be great at customer service. We have a data entry customer service position. That's a temporary job for GrubHub." GrubHub at that time was 50 employees.
Wow.
And so I went and did, and I found out there wasn't a lot of customer service to it either. It was just data entry.
Uh-huh.
So all those early day menus that you were clicking on, I probably inputted them.
Wow.
So I started working at GrubHub, and then I quit because it was temporary and they weren't paying me enough. And I found another job working for our troubleshooting for Innova Financial. And suddenly I found myself in the finance world. And I'm like, this is so weird. Like, how does a film guy end up in the finance world? Mm-hmm. And I did that for about 6 months, and then GrubHub called me back. And they said, "Hey, we remember you, and we're putting together a team, and we want you to be a part of it. And this is how much it's going to pay." And I was like, perfect. So I did this startup company kind of hopscotch thing that a lot of people end up doing. And I ended up going back to GrubHub, ended up working for them for 4 years. I was their first post-sales production manager. I was employee number 150, and I stayed at GrubHub until they went public. And then I became a 10,000-aire.
What does that mean?
It means I cashed in my stocks and I had tens of thousands of dollars.
Okay.
Some people became millionaires because the company went public. And my wife at that time was working in theater, and she said, "I want to go to grad school." And I said, "Yeah, let's pull up stakes and go to grad school." And she went to University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana for grad school. And then I started working in the theater's production department, which was basically a roadhouse. So concerts or tours come through, I would help coordinate them. I'd get them set up. I'd, hold their hands through the whole process. Well, and that only was good for the school year. So we were both basically unemployed for 3 months out of the year during the summer. So we started doing summer stock, which is, all these summer festivals that are happening, summer theater. Well, we got hired by the Chautauqua group out in Chautauqua, New York. She did the building side of everything. So she was their technical director. And I did their front of house, but I also did the front of house work for their opera company. So that's how I transitioned into theater.
Okay.
And then she got done with school and decided to go take a job at the Old Globe Theater in San Diego in Balboa Park as assistant technical director there. And I followed along, and after being there for 6 months, I got a job as the assistant front of house manager for San Diego theaters, which included the San Diego Civic Theater and the Balboa Theater. So there's a lot of like theater. But those two theaters specifically, the Balboa was an old vaudeville theater that had been renovated, and the San Diego Civic Theater obviously had been the like community theater, not like community like they put on their own shows. Community was like, that's where the symphony orchestra played, that's where the opera played, that's where the Nutcracker was every year, that kind of civic theater. So I did that quite a few years, and then late in 2019, early 2020, something happened, the world got put on hold, and my job never came back. So we packed up our bags, moved back to Chicago. And this is the part I think your listeners are going to be most interested in. I drew a line in the sand, and I had a little bit of savings in the bank. And I said, I'm not going to run at the first job I see. I'm going to take my time and figure out what I want to do. Mm-hmm. And I had to weigh the options. Did I want to get back into film? Did I want to get back into theater? Or did I want to pursue something a little bit more riskier and try to make it in the startup world again? Mm-hmm. And I interviewed for a few jobs, and one of them, quite a few theaters, one local production company, film production. And I got a couple job offers here and there, but I ended up turning them down because we talk about the pandemic and the lockdown, and I really... At that point in time, I had been doing front of house, and I'd been interacting with people for years on a entertainment level, and I was really tired of it, honestly. And I said, I'm just gonna find a job. I want a Monday. I really just put everything down on paper. Like, what do I want in a job? And I said, I want a 9-to-5 job. I want to have my weekends off. My wife has the weekends off. I want to be able to enjoy time with her. I want a job where they respect me, where I'm doing good work, and the work I'm doing is important, and I'm appreciated for doing it. I want a job that's remote. I don't want to have to travel 45 minutes to an hour every day to go to an office to sit at a desk when I know I could do it at home. And so I laid out those parameters of what I wanted in a job. And then I said, okay, I looked at my savings. I said, I got 3 months to do this. And after 3 months, if I can't, I will go scrape bird poop off the ceiling with my mouth open to make sure I have money coming in. But you know what I'm saying? Like I can be morally flexible.
Yeah.
But that was it. Because I got offered jobs, but it was like, one, they were either inadequate, like they were part-time, or the wages were too low, or two, they were jobs I just didn't want to do. And I know a lot of people don't have the ability to be picky, but man, if you can set yourself up to be a little more focused on it, you'll be surprised what can come out of it. So, long story short, I ended up in my current position working for a financial wellness company called Brighside Benefits. GoBrightside.com. It's the website.
Okay. We'll put that in the show notes.
And they are a benefit that's offered to employees from employers. And not to name names, but we have some of the largest employers in the United States as our customers. I am it's a confusing title, and it doesn't really explain what I do, but I'll say it anyways. I'm a CSA, which is a community support associate. Excuse me, customer support associate. Wow. Cut that other part out.
It's okay.
But you don't have to. It's funny. A customer support associate. So basically what it is, what we do is financial wellness. So Tom Spann is the CEO of the company, and their board, and they all believe in that health and finances is all tied together. And I don't disagree with them. And they have created this network of financial advisors who basically step in and help people out, figuring out where next to go in their life, or to help them out of a crisis situation they're in. Mm. I work on the crisis situation side of it. So we will have clients chatting in or calling in who are in desperate need. Desperate. And my team, we do what we call community resource researching. So basically, all these words don't mean anything. But basically, I act as a caseworker for these individuals, and I try to find community-based solutions for them in their current crisis situation. For example, we get people that call in that are homeless, just been evicted, going to be evicted. And I work within their community to try to find them some kind of solution to help them stabilize and remain housed and remain off the streets and sleeping in a bed. So sometimes that's me getting them into a shelter program. Other times that's me finding them emergency rental assistance that they can apply immediately. I work with people who are hungry. We get families that call in and say, you know, we don't have enough food in the house. Our paycheck went all to our bills. Mm-hmm. I don't know what I'm going to do. And we find local food pantries or donation centers that can help them out with some emergency food, and even to offer them a food pantry they can visit once a week, once a month, that they can offset the cost of not having that money. See, it's not about like just finding a financial solution for them, like here's a loan. It's more about, you know, finding community resources that they can lean on when their times are hard for them. Because I don't know what the number is, but I feel like it's almost every one of us is living one paycheck away from being destitute.
Yeah, we're definitely closer to being houseless than we are to being billionaires. So
exactly. And when I lived out in San Diego during the pandemic, Adina and I were involved with a mutual aid group called We Are All We Got. And now that's kind of my mantra at work. Mm-hmm. When I'm working with these clients, I tell my financial advisors, they're all mine personally. I tell the financial advisors, like, hey, you got to remember your clients are in hard spaces. They're doing things they don't want to do. They're living places they don't want to live. You have to remember, you might be the only person that's in their corner. Mm-hmm. And we don't sell financial solutions and products. We sell hope for people that are down on their luck. And I think as a company that resonates stronger to the customer, to the clients that we work with, mm-hmm. than saying, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I hope you figure it out. Because I feel like, and this is going to get metaphysical or existential, I feel like in the world that we're in today, we have to look out for the little guy. We can't just be, I got mine, you get your own. We have to be in it for each other.
Agreed. Yeah.
Anyways, I have a really nice job now, and I love it.
I have so many questions. So the folks that you're helping, are they employees of the companies that use your service or that pay for your services?
Yes. And we call them, and it's coming out. I've seen it more and more news and articles coming out about this. I don't want to, they're the working poor.
Yeah. Part of me is like, why don't these companies just pay them more for their work?
Yeah. Why do they have to hire an
outside? Why do they hire you guys?
Exactly. But you know what? These companies also love us because it puts a happy spin on some of their hard stories.
Question is, how did you get that job? What were the steps?
So nothing. I just lucked into it. I'm just kidding. So here's the thing. I know from working in film and that you have to hustle, the hustle culture.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to hustle, and you have to hustle, and you have to know who to call. You have to know, if you don't stay in front of a production company or a producer or an owner or whoever you're working with, if you don't stay in the forefront of their knowledge of who to hire, they won't hire you. They don't, you could be the best AC in the world.
They'll forget you exist if you don't keep in their brain. Yeah.
And I knew that's what happened to me, but I also wasn't upset about it. I kind of put myself in that hole when I started telling producers, no, you can't hire me because you can't afford me because I'm worth more than that. But when I took that kind of hustle idea and applied it to finding a new job, it worked. I took 2.5 months to find that job. I gave myself 3 months, so I was getting really close to the end. But I treated it like a job. I got up in the morning, I took a shower, made myself breakfast, I put on clothes. I didn't do this in my jammy jams. I put on clothes, I went in my office, I shut the door, I turned on my laptop, and I started applying and calling places. And that's the other thing. It's like, it's one thing to apply to a place, like Lever's out there. Lever is like, Indeed, Lever, all of these job sites that you can apply to. There's a million of them. But how do you know your resume won't get lost in the noise? Because you pick up with a call. There's a phone number on every single website for that company. And you call and you just say, hey, I want to talk to somebody in the people's team or HR. And you say, hey, my name's Matt. I just submitted a resume. I just wanted to make sure you got it. Does that sound insane? But it works. I got more job hits that way than any other way.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I've applied to probably 250 jobs on LinkedIn and Career Builder and Indeed. And I have sent private messages to hiring managers, but calling the company is definitely an interesting, bold step that maybe, I know the younger generation doesn't like phone calls. So,
well, and that's the other thing too, is like, you have to stand out from the crowd. Because there's nothing. How do you explain 10 years of film work on a resume?
It's so hard. This is why we're doing this podcast, because a lot of people don't know how to translate their skills.
And when I looked at my resume, when I looked at my production resume, it was, director, movie, commercial, it was like this laundry list of things I did, or won this award, that kind of stuff, which is all great. It looks great to a person that's in film or in production.
Right.
Doesn't translate to the mortal world.
Right. Yeah. Not even corporate world. It's just the
So what you got to do is you got to take those skills that you have, and you have to put those on there, and then you have to just put in there a blanket statement or a blanket line that's like film production, 2004 to 2010, and then maybe underneath there, like, camera operator, AC, director, whatever applies to you. And then when you're in the interview process, then you get to pounce on them and give them all that film knowledge you have. You get to tell them about the 14-hour days. You get to tell them about the 24 hours to do flipping from day to night. You get to tell them about split shifts. You get to tell them about, like, all that stuff. And then people's eyes go wide, because I don't want to surprise anybody on this podcast, but I believe the film production process, the actual working of it, is a little bit toxic.
Oh, no, not at all.
It is not. It does not have an adequate work-life balance.
No.
And I still have friends in the industry that I still talk to this day, and they still have the same complaints that they had 10 years ago. And yes, things are getting better in the industry, but it is at a snail's pace, because the industry runs on the back of its labor.
Well, it's also not getting better because it's lessening.
It's true. That's true. But I mean, there's been advancements as far as like interns on set and
people getting paid to be
getting paid.
interns.
Yeah. No more free labor.
Right.
The unions are getting better about upholding the rules.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're gonna break the overtime rule. Well, we are gonna slap you with a 3 or 4 times pay then.
No, it's
I would more often than it happens.
Our new contract has a little bit more protections about that, and they took away the. We were on some productions only getting paid double time after 14 hours, which is like different than state law in California.
It's different than state law in every state.
Yeah. But there are definitely we won some things in this contract, so that's good. But
back to the resume building.
Yeah.
So that's how you translate it. If it ends up being a situation where you've been in film for the last 15, 20 years, like that's only your resume, then build it out like you would, like we just did. Like talk about where you started, talk about where you went, and talk about where you ended up and what skills you collected on the way. That's the important part. And then when you're on these, when you're looking at a Indeed or a LinkedIn job, and you say, yeah, I think I can do this, look at your resume and then craft it to be applicable to the job. And then I cannot stress this enough, run it through ChatGPT and fix all those spelling errors. I've done a lot of hiring in my time now, and I'm going to say that like sometimes it comes down to hiring somebody is like coming down to splitting hairs. So you have to be careful and make sure that your resume is as polished as it can be. get a second pair of eyes, even if it's somebody who's not a resume builder, to take a look at it. All of us have that friend that went to school and got a degree in English. Reach out to them.
Yeah.
When I was building my resume, I chose 3 people, and I said, hey, I trust you, and I want you to give me honest opinion and feedback on how to make my resume better. 3 people. Just find 3 people in your life that can do that. And one of them was not Adina, my spouse. So I made sure it was somebody outside of that. I made sure it was just people that I knew that were detail orientated, and they would give me the best feedback. And I changed my resume. I know a lot of times it feels like a stroke of luck to get a job. But I think, like I said, if you apply yourself and treat it looking for a job as seriously as it should be treated, you'll find what you want. It does take time. You can't just turn on your computer and get the first job that you see. It does take time, and it is a lot of heartache. And there were jobs that I really, really wanted that just never manifested. And since I was looking in the startup field specifically, there were a lot of I was getting job offers. I make it sound like I was getting millions. I wasn't getting that many, but I had a couple incidents where I was getting job offers for a startup company, but they wanted to pay you in attaboys and good luck and minimum wage. And it's why?
Copy meal credit.
Yeah. I'm like, can't do that. I can't do that.
Right.
In the real world, this isn't even in production. This is in the real world.
Right. A startup is kind of.
Yeah. It's still the Wild West.
Yeah.
That's why I love it. I love the chaos. But, there was a job that I got offered working for a very known EV charging station company. Mm-hmm. But the day I was supposed to get hired, the day I was supposed to sign my paperwork, they couldn't give me an offer letter because the CEO had just stepped down. All hiring had been frozen that day. If they would have gave me the offer letter 24 hours earlier, I would have been golden. But because that happened, and I waited 3 weeks. I said, okay, I'll wait 3 weeks. And I waited 3 weeks, and I eventually had to tell him, listen, I know I'm perfect for the job. I know you want me to work for you. I know that everything looks great. But I've got about 3 weeks of looking for a job time left, and then I got to do something, so I can't wait around anymore. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
You did. Well, I have more questions. So I will say in my personal experience, I did spend a lot of time catering my resumes, my cover letters. We talked about chat GPT in another episode as well. There's lots of issues with AI and creativity, and I think that it's okay to use AI as a tool, but not as a venue for creativity. But I have, because I got really sick of having to spend all my time catering my my cover letters. I would put all the skills that I have, put the job description, and say, hey, help me write a cover letter. And then I would cater that cover letter. But what do you say to the folks? Because I also did this. I did this on, not with ChatGPT, but on my own in my resumes, catering my resumes to the job posting, and then either not hearing back or getting canned rejection letters of thank you for your application. We're going a different route. After getting 30 of those, I just started easy applying. Just send in my resume, easy apply. And I think what do you say to the folks who have been so frustrated and are kind of giving up because they're not getting?
Yeah, I think, it's like anything in life. When you start to get frustrated with it and it's starting to not be productive to you, I think the best thing that I would tell you to do is take a step back. Maybe, because I was treating it like a job, but in that essence, I was treating it like a job, Monday through Thursday. And then I had a 3-day weekend every weekend. And I did become frustrated also, but instead of letting that frustration, we're like a river when when we're looking for things, we try to find the easiest route to get there. And I would say, if you're finding yourself in a situation where you're getting 0 responses, and I'm going to tell you why. First of all, I have an insight on that, but this first point is to look at your tactic. Think about it like that. What am I doing to make sure I stand out when I contact these companies. Now, the other side of that, the other point of it is, some of these companies are not interested in hiring you. Some of these companies aren't interested in hiring anybody except for the perfect candidate. But the perfect candidate doesn't exist. And they're okay with that. Because as long as they say, we're trying to fill this position, on the books, they're being a good employer by trying to hire more employees.
But they're generally just giving that work to someone else and not paying them for it.
Ding, 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 ding.
I know a lot of companies also have to post openings, even though they're planning to hire within. So they have to publicly post jobs. So it might sound like a really amazing job that you'd be great at, but they're not going to hire you anyway.
So it's kind of, it's easy to get frustrated and it's hard out there. And I understand that. But I do think like treating it like a job and making sure that you examine your tactics and your resume on a regular basis. If it's not working out, if you get an interview and you get a call back, I'm not like, if they say, hey, we didn't hire you, your resume looks great and everything like that, say, hey, what could I change? Like ask for feedback. People team and HRs love that. That's their shining moment. They get to give somebody advice unsolicited.
Yeah. I've done that with a couple companies and have gotten some feedback and then some just didn't respond.
Yeah, and it just depends on the temperament of the company.
I also have discovered that recruiters who are really excited about you at first, as soon as they find out that you might not fit the job description, they totally ghost you.
Yeah, a matter of fact, that's funny. Now that I'm working at Brighside and I have like finance tied to my name on LinkedIn, I get headhunted about once or twice a month. I'll get a message from a recruiter. I'm not in finance. I'm in resourcing.
Right.
They don't know that.
Yeah.
They just see finance and they're like, hey, bro, you want to come working for us?
Yeah.
And I'm like, sure. What kind of social service program are you trying to promote? And they'll be like, what?
So you catered your resume.
Yep.
And how did you get the job? What was the process?
The process was 2.5 months and probably about 150 to 200 applications out there and a handful of interviews. Not kidding. Like you would think you would get like 1 million interviews after, or not 1 million, but you'd have a 10-to-1 ratio or something like that. No, it's more like 1 or 2 or maybe 3. So I had a few interviews, and then one of the last ones, obviously, that I had was with Brightside. And I had an interview with the recruiter first, and that went very well. And I was like, great. And she said, I'm going to pass your name along, and someone's going to be in contact with you, and we're going to set up the next interview. That was on a Wednesday. Wednesday afternoon, she messaged me and said, hey, I have 2 team leads who want to interview you. Are you available on Thursday? And I said, sure. And it was Brittany Hardy and Christian Walker. What is Christian's last name? Christian Hernandez. There we go. They interviewed me, and they had, because they were trying to put together this community resource team, they had the most pointed and insightful questions they could ask. It was like, Christian was like, lady calls in. She says she's been in a domestic violence situation. What do you do? And it's like, wow. I'm like, what do I do? I'm like, did she call 911 already? And he points at me and he goes, exactly. Now what do you do? And I'm like, has she contacted her family? And he's like, exactly. Now what do you do? And I said, well, we are going to go ahead and make a plan, and we're going to get her in contact with any domestic violence advocates we can, and we're going to make sure she's safe, she has shelter, she has food, and just take care of her basic human needs. And we're going to do that all probably within 45 minutes to an hour. And he said, and you said we, so that I know you're working on a team.
Wow, good job.
Never go it alone, folks. Always assume that you're going to have a team backing you up. And so I went through the interview process. They were very impressed by me, obviously. Well, who wouldn't be? And so that Friday, HR sent me an offer letter. And that Monday, I started working at Brightside.
Wow. And how did you prepare for that interview? Like, did you had to have been looking up what would you do in those situations, right? Or like, how did you just know that already?
Ex-military, combat medic. I mean, I worked in film. Come on.
Yeah,
you could throw anything at me and I'd figure it out.
Yep.
It's like the director of photography is drunk and passed out. What do you do?
I kind of want to hear that story.
It never happened. It never happened. Just making it up. I did on Feed. This is the example that I think I could fall back on. On Feed the Fish, we had the polar bear plunge where everybody jumps in the Lake Michigan with barely any clothes on in the middle of January.
Yes.
We were reenacting that for the film, and we had the original place that was supposed to take place in Jacksonport, Wisconsin. We had a blizzard that day, and I had 150 extras. Location manager on this one, by the way. I had 150 extras, and I had them all in this like fire station when we were prepping and stuff like that, and talking about how the shoot was going to go. I'm waiting for the blizzard to break, and then the producer came in and said, "The blizzard's not breaking. We're scrapping the day. We're going to move on to shoot something else, interior," which happens in film, So we had to adjust real quick. Everybody there was like, "No, we can still do the polar bear plunge." All the extras, and we're like, "Yes, but the cameras won't see you, so it's not a day to do it." So we lost that location. We weren't able to recoup it. And we went to an interior, and then the producer and the director came to me, and they said, "Hey, Matt, we need to reshoot this polar bear plunge, and we need to make it in the next 48 hours. And you have to find the location because we lost Jacksonport. Mm-hmm. They're off the map. We can't do them anymore." So what do you do in that situation?
You make it happen. You find the spot and you do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it worked. Matter of fact, I think it worked better than the original location at the end of the day, because I found a hotel that was closed for the winter, but I got a hold of the owner, and they opened up the hotel for us, and they had a sauna set up for the actors to sit in after they did their plunge.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And so there was never any danger to them.
Now that's a thing. Everyone has a cold plunge. All the rich celebrities have cold plunges in their backyards with a sauna.
Yeah. It's less impressive when you do it that way.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and so when it comes to a DV situation, it's very similar, and it's just common sense sometimes. And it's also for me, it's keeping cool under pressure, because you can worry about the emotions of the situation after they're done.
Yep.
That's what therapy's for.
We've talked, yes. Please, everybody get therapy. It's so important. We've talked about that in a couple other episodes too, of that you'll see chaos happening, and the base camp PA will be super calm. Or, the person who needs to think about what's next is the calmest in the storm. And that is, the skills of film set, the skills of folks that work in film are pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think the people that work in film are some of the best people in the industry for anything. Best people, if there was a fire, I would look to the film people to know what to do in the building and not anybody else. Mm-hmm. I will say, for the polar bear plunge, I got to the day before the shoot. So 24 hours before the shoot, I locked in the location, had everything all set up, had extras already lined up. And the director came to me and said, "Okay, we got the place, we got everything set up." He's like, "Hey, did anybody test the water?" And I was like, "Test the water?" He's like, "Yeah, did anybody go into the lake? Because I don't want my actors jumping into jagged rocks." And I was like, "Fair point." So I called the local fire department. We lean on locals a lot for things like this.
Right.
And I said, because they have what they call the wet dry suits,
mm-hmm.
to hang out in the water in and not die. I said, "Hey, can I get somebody to come out here with a wet dry suit and check the lake bottom?"
Oh yeah, because they have to run into the water. You don't have to
run and jump in.
So smart. Yep.
And the local fire department, the chief said, "Yeah, I would, except we're too busy saving people's lives." And I'm like, "Okay, true. Well, there was a fire that day, obviously, or something, some kind of emergency. They weren't able to help me out." And he said, "But," he's like, "if you want to, call me just before you go in and stay on the cell phone, and you're going to tell me if you're okay or not." This is a true story, folks. And I said, oh, I have to get into the water? And he's like, "Well, yeah." And I went to the director, and I'm like, "Can we get, instantly my mind was like, can I throw a PA in the water? No, can't do that." I'm like, "Okay." And the director was like, "Hey, you're the location manager. You really got to take care of this yourself." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't want to jump into Lake Michigan in the middle of January with nobody else around."
Yeah. Safety.
Safety. There's a little hazard there, but somebody needed to check the water. So I found some insulated hip waders. and one size too small. And I walked and I waded out into, and it was still cold, folks. Don't get me wrong. It was still cold. Waded out into the area where they're going to be jumping in, and it was a sandy bottom. I was like, perfect. Okay. And then I waded out and I had to walk 100 yards back to the hotel through snow. I almost didn't make that walk because the snow kept on freezing on me. And so my legs turned into ice blocks. So then I hired a plow, and I had him plow out the whole field so we could have easy access.
Wow. Yeah. Film folks, we get it done.
Yeah. That's a long story. You can cut it.
No. We'll keep it in. Is there anything you miss about set?
Yeah, it's in the trenches. Like, we're all in it together. Sometimes, things will get heated and people will get angry at each other, but there's so much work to be done. By the next day, everybody's forgotten or forgiven about it. Mm-hmm. So I miss all the good times. Who doesn't?
Right. What's your life like now? What's different? What's the quality of life?
I have a work-life balance that I finally feel comfortable with after years and years and years at the grind, the hustle of trying to make things happen. I have a steady paycheck. I have a loving wife. I have a beautiful apartment. I have 2 lovely cats. I wake up and I go to bed at the same time. I don't have to worry about my schedule changing. I have a good work-life balance. I'm very blessed. I'm very happy that I have the friends I have and that I'm surrounded by a community that I love. And I will never stop fighting for the little guy. And I will always look out for the people that need help.
Is there anything you'd like to add or anything that I didn't ask that you would like to add to the conversation?
I would love to add that you're a great host.
Oh, thank you.
And I enjoyed listening to the podcast, what I've listened to so far. So keep it going. And I think, as time goes on, maybe the film industry will get better. Maybe someday I will go back to it. But right now, no.
Awesome. Matt Vaessen, thank you so much for being my first in-person guest.
Woo!
We'll see if this worked. And thanks for being on The Company Move.
All right. Well, thank you. And you have yourself a great day.
You too.
Company Move is produced by me, Rennie Pollack, and is produced and edited by Robin Lavecchio. Thanks to Selena Persiani for designing our graphics. Our theme music was written by Cliff Beach and performed by Cliff Beach and Alex Nestor. You can follow Cliff on Spotify. Our interstitial music was composed and performed by Gabe Rosen. A special thank you to Keaton Susky for naming our podcast. Have questions, suggestions, or want to be a guest? Write us at companymovepod@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram at companymovepod. Please follow and rate us on whatever platform you listen to us on. That's a wrap for this week, y'all. Thanks for listening. Come on back next week for a new episode of the Company Move podcast.